What's going on, boys? It is day number 10 of reading through the book of Isaiah. We are going to be finishing up a story that we jumped into yesterday, and then we are going to go through the entirety of another one, and then actually two more, really. So we get to look at two more stories that Isaiah is going to share about the Lord towards these nations of Assyria and Israel, and the surrounding ones, like Samaria, Damascus, and the city of Jerusalem. So the first thing that immediately caught my eye was the first two verses in this chapter. There was an immediate call out to me, especially in a lot of things that happen in the world today. And I want to read it real quick just to and then I'll share my thoughts on it, about what it was a calling to me. Isaiah says, "Woe to those who make unjust laws, to those who issue oppressive decrees, to deprive the poor of their rights, and withhold justice from the oppressed of my people, making widows their prey, and robbing the fatherless." So the immediate thought that came to mind here was one who does not propose fair laws should be punished, should be, dealt with by God. It makes me think about, where I live in today. I live, in the U.S., in a country where, it's free, but there are so many different, violent things going on that, I may not have no idea about, but other people claim that it's this way, and it's just hard to tell what's going on anymore. And it's really more tough for the smaller nations around the world, what we would consider the third world countries that are really poor and don't have that fairness that countries like the U.S. have. So I think, the immediate message here is be grateful for what you have. Be grateful that, you get to have the opportunity to learn and to share with other people. And that remember that you matter and that your life matters. Doesn't matter who you are, where you come from, how old you are. I promise you, if you're watching this right now, I promise you matter. Don't ever let someone ever say you don't matter. You do. Doesn't matter what you've been through. All of us go through hardships. All of us go through some stuff that we can just get so angry at, or maybe there's a certain person that we just wish we could just, fight in a ring. But I promise you, it's not worth it. I promise it. Let God deal with them. There's some cruel people in the world who will just never understand, and that's not our job to handle. That's God's job. Let God deal with that. Let God, tell that person to straighten up. That's not your job, because we're all human, and at the end of the day, we're all on the same level. So does it really matter? But anyway, I just wanted to kind of share that at kind of closing off the message that we read yesterday. So the first full passage we're going to look at today is God's judgment on Assyria. Now, the set of verses that I'm going to start off with, I thought was kind of interesting because, verse 6 says one thing, and then verse 7 says something completely different. And I love how it just kind of, I say contradicts it, but just kind of, says one thing and then it just flips it on its head. So I'm going to read it. It says, "I sent him," this is Isaiah, "I sent him against a godless nation. I dispatch him against the people who anger me, to seize loot and snatch plunder, and to trample them down like mud in the streets. But this is not what he intends. This is not what he has in mind. His purpose is to destroy, to put an end to many nations." So if you catch where I'm going at here, those who rebel God's commands often don't see the truth. They don't see, things being answered, and they go on to curse God and stick to their own pride and do whatever they feel like doing. And instead of just, constantly sending, prophets over there to speak the word, God is going to step in and make an action happen. He's going to destroy the evil and preserve what can grow. There's a famous saying, you shouldn't say, don't save what you can't grow. If there's something that's just not going to change and it's not going to get any better, then you need to just remove it from your life. Remove that thing from your life that's holding you down, because that's what a lot of us are dealing with. There are so many things that we think we can better, but there's really not much we can do. And it sucks at times because you wish you could change it. You wish you could, make something better. But at the end of the day, whether you're dealing with a personal problem or something else, or you're dealing with a medical issue, sometimes there's just not anything really we can do. And it's not because we don't have the knowledge for it. It's not because, we don't want to save you, we don't want to help you, it's because we really don't know the answer. And we could sit here all day looking for it, but by the time all the time we spend with it, it's just gonna be too late. So that's where we have to turn to God and be like, God, I've done all I can. Like, I just can't. I need you to step in, and I need you to just help me out. And I feel like that's how God answers this situation. I think it's how he still answers us today. There's just some things that we just don't understand. And that's okay. We just have to be like, you know what? I gave it my best. Now it's up to God. Now he decides. And what's interesting is it almost corresponds with verse 13, where this is the Lord's kind of statement he makes. He says, by the strength of my hand I have done this, and by my wisdom, because I have understanding, I remove the boundaries of nations. I plunder their treasures like a mighty one who I subdued their kings. So God's, commit to doing these actions isn't because he has favorites, or isn't because he wants to destroy humanity or destroy mankind. It's because of his powerful wisdom. He sees what is going to happen. And that's what we always, hear about, is that God, can see our futures. He can see our plans. He can see our lives. He sees our full lives from the day we're born to the day we die. And sometimes we have to remind ourselves that's how he is. And it is even kind of hard to imagine, well, how is it possible that God can see me right now, but yet he can see me when he knows when I'm going to die? He knows when I'm going to be laid in the casket. He knows when I'm going to have my first kid. He knows when I'm going to, when I'm going to have my grandchild. Like, how is that possible? How is it possible that he almost exists in different time spectrums? Well, that's just another part of God's wisdom that is so great. It's something that we just can't understand. While we are very intelligent beings, and we are the only species that is able to think outside the box, basically, we still are imperfect. So, if someone ever says, well, human species is the most intelligent thinking species to ever exist, and there's nothing that's more intelligent than us, I tend to disagree. And I think that's where we have to, remind ourselves that, God does provide us with that wisdom, but he almost limits it to where we only know so much, because he wants us to learn. And if we learned all of this, if we had all this knowledge, then there wouldn't be a point of us being who we are. And that's just what it has to be sometimes. I was reading verse 15, where Isaiah says, does the axe raise itself above the person who swings it, or the saw boast against the one who uses it? And this made me think of a thing I was watching on social media a couple weeks ago, and I kind of wanted to recreate it a little bit, and it's with this glove. Now, bear with me here. The whole point of this verse is to say that there are many objects and items that are present in our life, but the only way they have power is by the things that utilize them. So basically, what do we do with them? How do we use them? Do we use them for good, or do we use them for bad? And you think of a glove, and I'll hold it up right here so you can see it. Got my little notebook here so you can see that I have my notes. But you can look at the glove and you see that it's not going to move. And you can tell it to move, like, move, glove, and it's not going to move. I can sit here and yell at it. I can scream at it. It's not going to move. Only does the glove move when you give it some life. When I put my hand in it, now it can move in any direction it wants to. I can do this. I can do that. I can throw a fist. I can wave. I can do whatever I want to do. And that's what's so special about it, is that in life, there are many things that are like that. Whether it's people, let me fix my phone here, but that's not going to work. But there are many things that we consider to be good, but there's other people who don't. There are so many different things that, God has provided for us. But then there's things that we created that we use that we think might be bettering us, but in reality, they're not. Think about drugs and alcohol and drinking in general. Alcohol is provided for us, and it's something that does exist, but people abuse it and use it for bad. Think about, fame and being with other people. People often abuse it. They have to be around people all the time. Sometimes you just have to, just live by the Spirit. Don't live that double life, because it doesn't work. I've tried. It doesn't. Um, and it's a hard thing to imagine. And I love that example there. And this brings me to my closer, which is going to be in verses 24 through 25, which is titled The Remnant of Israel. So this is kind of God's kind of speech to Israel. He says, "My people who live in Zion, do not be afraid of the Assyrians, who beat you with a rod and lift up a club against you, as Egypt did. Very soon my anger against you will end, and my wrath will be directed to their destruction." So this 3-word phrase that is repeated, I believe it's 365 times in the Bible, do not be afraid. It's something that about that phrase that you can say it, do not be afraid, do not be afraid, do not be afraid. While it is very simple and some would consider it very basic, it's very powerful. And it tells us that we have to remain confident in hard times, especially with people who can't fathom God's word, people who don't understand. Because what a lot of times what I've noticed, and maybe you've noticed it as well, is when people don't know God very well, they tend to curse him and they tend to claim that he doesn't exist. But yet they haven't searched. If you don't search, you're not going to find an answer. So you sit there claiming, well, he's not real. It's like, well, you don't know that. Like, you haven't searched. Like, you can't say something doesn't exist, but you haven't searched for it, right? But what we do know is that God does exist, and he loves us, and he loves us so much that he sent his son to die on a cross for us. And that's what we get to live every day, knowing that we're redeemed, and that we have the opportunity to fight against these evil ways of this world with the Holy Spirit that guides us into the light of everything, from our family, our friends, and just everybody in general. So I hope that this message finds you well, and I hope that you guys have had a great week. I hope that you can take some time and reflect and pick out what you did right, pick out what you did wrong, take the good things, take the bad things, and use it to push into next week. I hope that you guys have a great weekend. I'll see you soon. Peace out, boys.